Yeah.
In 2020, we made the life-altering decision to buy a rundown
Is it okay if I tell the story? I think it'll be better.
Okay.
So we were looking at buying a cabin in the Poconos, and we had decided on a few properties. Brian was going to go up there and take a look at them. Except for when he came back, he had decided instead that it would be a great idea to buy an abandoned motel
It's a great business opportunity.
with our young family
Starting young, right?
and move them up there to renovate the hotel in the dead of winter.
It's a beautiful time of year.
We have a valve down here. It's leaking water.
With absolutely no hospitality experience
But I'm pretty good with people.
and very little money.
Well, can't really solve for that.
And there's an incredibly tight timeline to get it all done by the summer season. And for those wondering, no, we had not seen the show Schitt's Creek at the time.
We are Brian and Joanna Linton, and this is our real-life story of abruptly leaving city life for rural America, living in an old motel, and attempting to transform it into a $1 million hospitality business, all while being transformed ourselves. There are many difficult conversations you can have with your wife. Not many of them include asking her to uproot everything during a pandemic to move to an old motel in the mountains. But come on, the motel is in a place called Promised Land. Yes, that's the actual real name. We'd be crazy not to buy it. But at the end of the day, it boiled down to dollars and cents because this motel we could purchase was about the same price as those cabins that you wanted. You see, this motel was $240,000, and that could buy a sizable cabin in the Poconos or a not so sizable house in Philadelphia. But what's the fun in that when you can have a whole motel, even if it's falling apart? Thankfully, my wife is in the family business of doing things that aren't always exactly orthodox, so she reluctantly agreed.
It did take a lot of convincing, but our two young kids had the time of their lives. Brian and I have always had entrepreneurial spirits, although he's got a risk-taking curious streak,
One way to expand the business is to acquire more property.
which means he's always on the lookout for new opportunities.
I grew up in Singapore, where I could have never imagined that I would one day own anything more than a postage stamp-sized piece of land.
And I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia to Taiwanese immigrant parents. Brian and I met in college studying abroad in Beijing, China, and after we graduated, we both settled in Philadelphia.
So if you're following along, of course the logical life path led us to buy and live in a motel in the mountains, right? Instead, I'm pretty sure our path screamed, work in the city, take vacations to exotic foreign countries, and avoid things that lock or tie you down to any one place in this world.
And that's how it sort of started for the both of us. I went to go work a very corporate job. I love cubicles. And Brian decided to start his own company right out of college, which is a whole other story for a different time. In 2009, we started our first company together and built United by Blue, a brand of sustainable clothing and accessories focused on ocean conservation. Our strengths naturally led to me leading product development and operations and Brian as the CEO. And within a few years, the brand took off.
Entering 2020, United by Blue was doing great. The company was approaching 100 million in lifetime sales and had over 100 employees. Something was missing. More than a decade in, I had lost some of the passion for what I was doing and was struggling to find happiness and joy in the thing that I had poured my heart and soul in for most of my adult life. In short, at that moment in time, I could have never imagined that a virus would jolt me awake by taking away most of what I had built. The impacts from the pandemic and the decisions that I made cut deep. My investors removed me as CEO of the company I founded, and I was adrift, unhappy, scared, and unsatisfied in my entrepreneurial journey.
Meanwhile, the year prior, I had left United by Blue to focus on growing our young family, as well as start building my own company around maternal wellness after our own pregnancy journey. So this all leads us to Promised Land and what was then called the Tashman Motel. It was a rundown motel originally built in the 1950s in a tired, rundown mountain town.
Promised Land, like the Pocono Mountain region as a whole, was a happening place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Known as the honeymoon capital of the world, it was particularly popular as a romantic getaway with hotels that offered tacky amenities like heart-shaped tubs or champagne flute jacuzzis.
Some would say that this region's better years are behind it, but when you look past the rough edges, you do see the beauty of this place is not what man, but nature has created.
The gem of Promised Land is in its 3,000 acres of pristine public lands, Promised Land State Park. And when I first saw the Toshman Motel and realized that it shared a border with the state park, I quickly popped open All Trails, and I realized that the trail system ran right past the property, something the current owners weren't embracing at all. But I knew it would be the most amazing feature to promote and offer to potential future guests. A massive value arbitrage was unlocked in that moment. To confirm my findings, my son Rex and I went into the woods to find the trails, and immediately we ran into a black bear.
A bear! A bear!
Now I think we definitely have to buy this place. It was like a sign from Promised Land. This place was meant to be ours. We made an offer that night.
So in October of that year, when social distancing was still very heavily enforced, we left the city, moved to Promised Land, and found ourselves living outside of a city for the first time in our lives. At least now we only had to worry about distancing ourselves from bears.
A bear?
A bear.
Maybe he's going to run towards us.
No, he's nice bear.
Those first few days were rough, to say the least.
I thought they were sort of fun. Well, first, I had to find out where our water came from. Ah, yes, a well.
Which was not working.
No, it wasn't. There's no public water like I've had my entire life in cities. Who knew? 3 days later, the faucets were finally flowing. Then it was time to start renovations, and this place was a dump. But we were determined to make it work.
That's a nice way of saying we had no other choice. The thing is, we bought it in October, and we knew that if we didn't open by the summer season, we would run out of money. We had to move fast. To move fast, our initial plan was just to do some cosmetic improvements to the 10-unit property. However, after peeling back some layers, we realized there was a lot more that had to get done.
But a full gut required us to find labor that would be willing to be led by a very inexperienced general contractor, me. Don't get me wrong, I've led the renovation work of 3 houses we've bought and lived in. Just nothing at this scale.
But at least we showed up.
Yeah, because some of our contractors, they would just disappear. And the ones that did show up, they were interesting, to say the least. Especially the one that carried a handgun named Little Baby.
Labor challenges weren't the only things that we had to deal with. The weather. I have never seen so much snow before. We didn't see the ground for 4 months, and while our kids loved it, it was horrible for our building materials.
Speaking of building materials, lumber prices soared during our renovation and continued to climb, forcing us to the point of insolvency. What seemed to be moving in slow motion was actually a sprint, and by the time the snow melted, our focus began to shift to the exterior and the landscaping. Knowing that the outdoor experience was a core element of what we were selling our guests, we took this very seriously. Learning how to drive a tractor, I spread nearly 1 million pounds of sand, gravel, and dirt all around the property to raise it up from the wet, swampy land that we purchased, creating the garden-like atmosphere that it is today.
All those late night YouTube videos really came in handy.
Oh yeah, you can learn a lot on YouTube.
By July 2021, our first rooms were ready. Although it wasn't part of our initial strategy, out of necessity, we opened in stages, which enabled us to use the income from the initial rooms being open to fund the balance of the renovation work that would need to continue for several more months. That same model of investing back into the property continues today, and it's allowed us to add things like a corner store, an outdoor barrel sauna, and more hot tubs.
One of the most fulfilling parts of this project is reflecting on where the property was and what it has become. Not only have we transformed the rooms, but we've brought people back to explore Promised Land by giving them a place to stay that they could really enjoy. But it's also brought me, my wife, and our family a sense of purpose once again, and joy and excitement for careers that we had lost. And I have to say, seeing what people think about our place is all the more fulfilling.
And with the success of the Rex, it got us thinking, why stop there? Other than the fact that we did just have a 3rd baby, and we are pretty tight on finances.
All can be overcome. Promised Land is like a diamond in the rough and the perfect antidote to the fast-paced modern life. And because finding Promised Land changed us, we want to help transform it in return, all while creating a series of successful businesses that can help one another and the local economy.
And that's exactly what we're doing.
There are so many places in Promised Land that could use just a little time and money, but most importantly, love. And just like with the Rex Hotel, our next project is being designed to connect more people with the outdoor world.
So we're doubling down on Promised Land and taking all the profits from our hotel and moving it into new projects in Promised Land. And I guess sharing it on YouTube.
Yeah, and so if you've made it this far, it would mean the world to me and my family if you were to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and follow us along on this journey.
And if it all goes wrong and we lose everything, at least he'll have you to share it with.
Oh, thank you. But if all goes right, and I'm sure it will, we have the opportunity to transform this entire area and make Promised Land worthy of perhaps the coolest name in the history of town names.
Welcome to Promised Land.